If you take a look at my channel, I'm sure you'll notice that I'm a fan of Fire Emblem. My first introduction to the series was Fire Emblem Awakening back in 2019, and I've been hooked on the series ever since. I do enjoy the characters and the story, but the gameplay is what always keeps me intrigued. I actually have a mini-series on my channel about how I build my units in Awakening, so I'm pretty familiar with the mechanics and gameplay of Fire Emblem. So when I heard Dark Deity 2 had similar gameplay and mechanics, of course I was interested. I also just so happened to have bought the game on Switch a couple days after it was brought to the system, so that was a funny coincidence. That's not really important for anything, I just thought I'd throw that out there. I think Dark Deity 2 is a well-crafted experience that I'm sure Fire Emblem fans and strategy RPG enjoyers will love. It has tons of unit customizability, well-designed maps, and interesting characters. It even comes with randomizers baked into the base game, so there truly is something for everyone to enjoy. So, let's not waste any more time and take a closer look at what makes Dark Deity 2 so interesting. When you start up a new game, you're hit with tons of different options to customize your experience. Of course, you have the regular stuff like difficulty and permadeath, but you also have lots of other options. You can randomize lots of different parts of the game. You can randomize the enemies, the recruitment order, stat level ups, and lots of different things. What I love about this even more is that you don't need to finish the game or clear some challenge. You have access to these whenever you want. I'll go more in depth with the randomizers when I talk about the gameplay, but having these settings unlocked right off the bat is really cool to me. Once you finalize your settings and get started with the game, we are immediately met with the setting and our main characters. When you get started with Dark Deity 2, you'll notice that this game throws all of its narrative elements at you really quickly. Within the first few hours of the game, you're already made aware of a previous war, multiple different groups of people, and different places that exist in this game's world. As much as I hate making a criticism this early into the review, it's just something I picked up on early in my playthrough. Dark Deity 2 doesn't exactly elaborate on its setting or its history. There's lots of moving elements in this game, like Britannia, Azvarel, Celeborn, and I personally was never able to pinpoint what everything was. The game almost acts like the player is already aware of the world's lore and locations, so it doesn't take all that much time to explain what everything means. I do appreciate that I don't have to study 10 pages worth of backstory to understand the narrative, but the different factions and their importance wasn't exactly explained, so it left me feeling out of the loop a bit. While this definitely is an issue, it's really only present for the world's history. Other things like the characters and their backstories are given a lot more attention, so you'll still be engaged in the campaign even if the world can feel a tad bit vague at times. Something else I noticed was that the story almost felt like it was episodic in a sense. Most other games like Life is Strange or The Last of Us have a clear, overarching story with a beginning, middle, and end. However, in Dark Deity 2, it almost feels like multiple episodes in a show stuffed into one cut. That may sound like a criticism, and to some it might be, but in my opinion, I actually kind of like it. I'm sure we've all played a game, not touch it for weeks, then come back and forget what's going on in the story. It happens to me a lot, and I'd be willing to guess you've experienced that too. So for different parts in the story to feel somewhat separated from each other may actually help remedy that issue other players go through. Outside of those two things I noticed, I enjoyed the rest of the story. This game really likes to play around with nuance whenever it comes to the world's politics and morals, and that's something I really enjoyed. I feel like a lot of the games I play present the story in a more black and white sense, but in Dark Deity 2, you're definitely thrown some gray areas in the story, and that was actually really refreshing. Near the middle of the game, you're sent to kill a god known as the Shamrock, since it's been going crazy and killing the townspeople and destroying their village. You'd think the villagers would want you to restore peace and kill the Shamrock, but they're actually against your attempt to defeat it. They think it's all part of the Shamrock's wrath, and they just need to atone for angering the god. Whether you kill or spare the Shamrock is up to the player, but the fact that the game makes you stop and think about what decision is right is something I thought was well done. Something else I loved about this game is how the main characters are criticized a lot. I know you're probably thinking that sounds weird, but hear me out here. Our main characters are parts of a group known as the Order of Eternals, with their father being the Grand Master. They're an independent party from the continent, trying to keep the peace and serve whoever may need their help. Since they're never aligned with a certain party, many people question what their motives really are. Many other leaders accuse them of having ulterior motives, which ultimately makes the characters and the world feel a lot more grounded. I've played so many games where it feels like the main character can do no wrong and everyone is more than happy to tell you how great you are. To me, it just feels disingenuous and kinda takes me out of the experience when I'm constantly being praised. So to have multiple other characters question you at nearly every point was actually kind of refreshing. The last thing I'll talk about before I move on to the gameplay is how I also really liked how Gwyn pushed back on being a leader. In other RPGs that I enjoy, like Persona or Final Fantasy, the main cast will usually just crown the protagonist as their leader, and they kinda just go with it. However, when we look at Dark Deity 2, Gwyn is almost always questioning why they want her as their leader. She constantly talks about how she feels like she's letting people down or not doing the right thing, and to me, that just feels a lot more natural. Like I said earlier, when it feels like the main character can do no wrong, it takes me out of the story a bit, but to have Gwyn actually resist being their commander felt unique. All things considered, Dark Deity 2 has a pretty good story. I think it has a lot of original elements that you may not see in other games. Of course, there are some flaws with the context and the backstory, but once it starts getting into the politics and drama within the characters, it becomes really interesting. While we're on the topic of things that are interesting, let's start talking about the gameplay. Dark Deity 2 takes a lot of what we know from those older GBA-style Fire Emblem games. The core gameplay loop may be a little simple, but it becomes addicting real fast. Not only that, but this game is filled to the brim with customizability and opportunity for cool unit builds. Before I get too ahead of myself, let's talk about some of the game's more basic features. If you've played or at least seen a Fire Emblem game, you should be somewhat familiar with the gameplay. You take a unit, move them to where you want, perform an action, level up, wash, rinse, repeat. It's nothing too crazy. However, what makes Dark Deity 2 different from Fire Emblem are some more basic features. Dark Deity 2 is full of abilities, and that's where most of your unit's utility will come from. So things like healing and debuffs will come from skills instead of the usual stabs or items. These skills will also cost you MP, so using some powerful skills will drain some of your units for a few turns. I know some people may not be fans of all the skills, but I think the game is balanced around them well. Like I said, skills will cost MP, so you can't spam the same skill for however long you want. You also only regain about 20 MP per turn, and most of the really good skills cost 80, so there's no real easy way to abuse them. Taking a look at all the abilities this game has, there's some really good ones here. You have the more basic skills like healing an ally or increasing stats, but oh man, do some of them get crazy. Divine Flow makes it impossible for anyone to hit you for 8 attacks. Spirit Bomb lets you damage enemies in a wide radius. Heck, one skill literally allows you to revive a dead unit. This game has some really fun and interesting skills to work with. What's even better is that you don't need to reach a certain level to get them. You can just reclass and get them immediately with no strings attached. Not only do you get skills you can use in battle, you also have some other passive abilities. These usually aren't too crazy, but they're more than welcome inclusions. These skills can range from things like healing a percentage of damage dealt, increased crit rate, and things like that. Each unit also has their own unique passive and battle skill, so no units will ever be the exact same. Unique skills can completely change how they interact with combat too, like how Taldera can reduce enemies' speed for 3 turns. Things like this can really specialize your units and can help fit them to a certain role you're looking for. Another feature I love that Dark Deity 2 has are status effects. I've been saying for years that Fire Emblem should add more status effects, and Dark Deity 2 doesn't disappoint. Bleed can reduce enemies' health after combat, Poison reduces stats, Block can reduce damage, just to name a couple of examples. These status effects can really change how you interact with combat and can create tons of new strategies. Overall, the combat and the mechanics feel really polished, the abilities greatly expand the things your units are capable of, and the status effects are the cherry on top. Taking a step back from the gameplay, this game also has some extra features to spice up combat. This game is full of rings, and just like the abilities, they can do some wacky stuff. These rings can give you some good buffs, like inflicting bleed on attacks, increasing movement. During the early game, I was able to get my hands on the Destiny ring, which gives a unit plus 40 crit if they wait during their turn. Safe to say, these rings are definitely a worthwhile investment, and can make your units even more powerful. On top of that, you can also add runes to your weapons to give them some extra enhancements. These don't do anything too crazy, but they can increase your hit rate, increase your crit rate, increase your strength, and things like that. They may not be as necessary as the rings, but they can really help you out in the long run. Earlier, I mentioned that this game has randomizers, and they are really fun to mess around with. You can change basically every element to your liking, and I think that's something every player can get behind. You can randomize the recruitment order, what skills you get from different classes, what skills the enemies have, how much EXP you earn, and tons of different things. The only complaint I'll make is that I wish you could randomize what classes all your units have, but other than that, this is a fantastic inclusion. RPGs already have tons of replayability, but these randomizers increase it by a lot, and most players will have a good time with it. Dark Deity 2 has some really great gameplay and mechanics. There's tons of classes your units can be, lots of skills and abilities that spice up combat, and randomizers that make repeat playthroughs way more interesting. I'd argue that the gameplay is Dark Deity 2's biggest strength. It may not be the most original, but it adds some really cool ideas to an already existing formula. Before I wrap up this video, I want to go over some smaller miscellaneous things that I wanted to talk about real quick. The first thing I need to talk about is the voice acting. The voice work in this game is so genuinely good. Even though this is an indie game, we have some really amazing talent. We got Elizabeth Maxwell, Micah Seleucid, Stephen Kelly, just to name a couple of examples. I'm not even exaggerating when I say I genuinely think this is some of the best voice acting I've heard in any game ever. They deliver a really authentic performance, and it really sucks you into the game. Heavy spoilers for this, so skip ahead if you don't want to hear it, but listen to this scene.
Father, I messed up. I really messed up.
No, Riordan. It's okay. I'm right here.
Father. Dad. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
My boy. My darling boy, don't apologize. Please just stay with me. Don't leave me. Please. 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 Come back to me.
You bastards! Murderers! You can't run from us! We will find you!
That scene really hit me, and the dialogue and voice work were incredible. You know, if I had a dime for every time Micah Seleucid played an archer in a strategy RPG game, I would have 2 dimes. That's not a lot, but odd that it's happened twice. Something else I really enjoyed was the music. Most of the music in this game had no right to be as good and catchy as it is. Alone in the Darkness was easily my favorite theme in this game, and it got stuck in my head multiple times throughout my playthrough. This game has plenty of other really good tracks that I think other people will enjoy. I'd argue that the music in this game is better than what other AAA games have to offer. That's how good I thought it was. The last thing I'll mention is the artwork. All the portraits are really high quality and have lots of detail. I especially loved the designs of Saxon and Lorai. Just by taking a look at them, I had a feeling they would be interesting characters. I will admit though, some of the artwork feels a tad bit inconsistent. Cassandra and Taldera almost look like they have two different art styles, but that could just be a me thing. Either way, I thought the artwork was really well done, and I felt like everything was able to stand out and be unique. Dark Deity 2 is just a really fun game. While the story definitely has its flaws, I still found it to be engaging and enjoyed their spin on a fantasy setting. I thought the gameplay was really fun, and I loved testing out the different builds and classes for all my units. The voice acting was so good, and I think most people will be able to get absorbed into the characters. Even if Dark Deity 2 has some flaws, the overall experience is great, and is a game that I would recommend to anyone. Alrighty, another video down. This post-video yap sesh may be a tad bit longer than usual, but that's just because there's a couple different things I want to talk about, but I'll try to make it short. I won't keep you hostage. The first thing I'll throw out there is definitely check this game out. I thought it was really fun, really unique, really interesting, so absolutely this game is worth your time. This game also recently came to PlayStation and Xbox a couple days ago, so it's pretty new to those consoles, so definitely check it out. Second thing I'll throw out there is that I'm using a new editing software. That's not really as exciting, you may not be able to tell, but I don't know, I thought I'd throw that in there. So this video was definitely a bit of an experience to make. I'm getting used to all the new software and the new features, so maybe it looks better, maybe it turned out better, I hope so. So yeah, that's not really important for you guys, I kind of just want to throw that in there. Last thing I'll say is hopefully you guys don't mind the somewhat shorter reviews. I know I usually do the 25 to 30 minute reviews, but these 15 to 20 minute reviews are a bit easier for me to do. I'm not stretching myself as thin, so hopefully you guys don't mind. I'm sure at some point I'll do another longer review, but for right now, I'm a bit more comfortable doing the 20-ish minute reviews, so hopefully you guys don't mind. So yeah, I don't really have anything else to say, so I guess that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. I love you, and I will see you all later. I main Invisible Woman in Marvel Rivals.